Great. Okay. Well, let me just make one or two preliminary remarks because this is the first of our lunchtime webinars, and some of the people that have joined this webinar are not actually participating in the workshop series that we're running on entrepreneurism. We particularly want to welcome them and hope that they'll join us for the other lunchtime webinars that we're holding during the workshop series. So thank you so much for joining us. I think you're going to find this a feast of information, and also we hope a lot of fun and also inspiring to look at the challenges and opportunities around entrepreneurism. So without delaying anything further, I'd just like to introduce Dr. Vivian Mouchoir. And Vivian is a professor in the Division of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation. She's an engineer by training, and she obtained her PhD in biomedical engineering from the University of Utah. She undertakes research in the Mouchoir Lab, which focuses on many aspects such as restoration of standing and walking after spinal cord injury, detection and prevention of deep tissue injury, and also functional electrical stimulation. I think that's only just a small sample of the things that Vivian is involved in. And so as director of the Smart Network, we're particularly pleased that Vivian's been able to spare the time to moderate this session for us and to introduce Victor Shewchuk. So over to you, Vivian.
Thank you very much, Martin, for this very kind introduction. And I, too, would like to welcome everyone to this webinar, which is part of the Smart Create Entrepreneurship Workshop series. Just a little bit about the Smart Create workshops. These are funded by the Canadian Natural Science and Engineering Research Council. And our goal is to provide skills and industry-oriented experiences to our trainees who are associated with the Smart Network at the University of Alberta. Now, many of you may already know that SMART stands for Sensory Motor Adaptive Rehabilitation Technology, and the Smart Network is a wide-ranging collaboration of researchers from many different disciplines, including engineering, medicine, rehabilitation, computer science, neuroscience, and social sciences, who have come together to generate knowledge related to neural injuries and diseases, and to translate that knowledge into intelligent medical devices and innovative rehabilitation interventions that would improve the abilities and life experiences, especially for persons living with neurological conditions. Now, we've got 40 students who are participating in this series of workshops on entrepreneurship. And these students have been divided into teams, and each team has been charged to tackle a challenge, and a challenge that is typical of the challenges that the Smart Network engages in. And as we know, the way to best tackle a challenge is to have a functioning team, and a well-oiled and well-working team, which is why for this first on this first day of this webinar series, we wanted to tackle this topic, and we've been very fortunate to have Victor Shewchuk with us, who is a renowned authority on what makes your team tick, and he'll be telling us about it. I had the privilege of meeting Victor several years ago when he was leading the Gold College Leadership Training Initiative at the University of Alberta, and I was fortunate to be part of that program. Now, just to tell you a little bit about Victor, he is the owner of VisionWorks Consulting Group, which was founded in 1995. He brings 30 years of experience, skills, knowledge, and expertise in the fields of organizational development, leadership and team development, change management, leadership coaching, values-based leadership, and human-centered design. And throughout his career, he's worked with a wide range of organizations, ranging from large organizations to nonprofits to major universities. Victor is an alumnus of the University of Alberta and holds degrees in psychology and education, as well as a certificate with distinction in adult and continuing education. Victor is also associate faculty at Royal Roads University in Leadership Studies, which is a part of the Masters of Arts in Executive Leadership program and the Graduate Certificate in Values-Based Leadership program. He teaches, does research, and he writes in this area. And we're really very excited to have Victor with us today, and look forward to his talk, which is titled, "What Makes You and Your Team Tick?" But just a couple of housekeeping notes before we hand it over to Victor. This webinar is recorded, and please make sure that you enter your questions in chat along the way so that we can address those questions at the end of the talk. Now with that, I hand it over to you, Victor.
Oh, yes, indeed. Thank you. Thank you, Vivian, and for that wonderful introduction. Thank you, Martin, for reaching out one day and talking about this as a possibility. I'm just absolutely thrilled to be here, and thank you and congratulations to the rest of the Smart Network folks for putting this on. This is something I have not come across in, as Vivian said, 25 or 35 years of doing this work, and how marvelous it is to offer graduate students at a major university the opportunity to think about not just what they do in terms of their technical expertise and their academic expertise, but how do you scale this out into an entrepreneurial venture. And once you graduate, a lovely place that you've spent a significant amount of time and energy, and you step out into the real world, and wow, there's a whole bunch of other humans here, and I have to enroll them in what I do, and society, and partners, and investors, and the rest of those things. So thank you for the invitation. Just a quick technical check. Vivian, thumbs up. You can see this title slide. Okay. Okay. It's kind of become somewhat ubiquitous, these Zoom calls or Teams, but you never know. Technology is our friend, and sometimes not so much. I would like to begin because maybe there are some folks that would not have attended perhaps the morning, and it's important to us and to me as well to do a very quick land acknowledgement. I'm in Edmonton. I was born and raised in Edmonton, and I would like to acknowledge that we're on Treaty 6 territory, a traditional meeting grounds, gathering place, and traveling route to the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, and Nakota Sioux. We acknowledge all the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries. And I feel privileged to live and call this place home and where I work from. So thank you for that, and thanks for everyone to attending. Okay, let's dive in. So Martin and I spent a lovely hour or so talking about, how can we help folks understand that a little bit more about what makes them tick and their teams and their organizations, so that once we get that amazing new entrepreneurial idea or product that we want to scale out, how do we do that in a way that excites and motivates and connects with others? Well, my work over 25, 30 years has been in values. It's been in psychology and the sociology of culture in organizations. So I'm happy to share a snippet of it. Part of what I'm going to present is traditionally or ordinarily given over a 3-month graduate program at Royal Roads, but I've tried to condense this down to as small as I can, just as a teaser, so that we can maybe get into some more conversation about it later on. So let's dive into it. Here's some objectives that I put together, and I was crafting these out last night as I attended the introductory piece, and then honed them a little bit more this morning. But let's explore. Let's take the next 45 minutes just to explore things around values, how values shape personal and collective identity and underpin culture. Explore what I call, and a colleague of mine, Christine Kavanagh-Simmons, the 3 stories leaders tell. How values bring life to our work and inform entrepreneurship, more than just a brilliant idea, folks. Let's explore how values inform decision-making and behaviors, particularly in difficult times and stressful moments. That's when we really rest back on our core values as an organization. And let's explore applications. I call this the so what now what. It's like, okay, Vic, that was great and wonderful, and I'm eating lunch over here, and this is nice background opportunity for me to sit back and listen, but so what now what? So let's talk about that together. I think you're well familiar with the fact that we are on Zoom, so please mute out your mics and keep them muted, but you can keep your cameras on if that suits you as well. ways to connect. I'd like to hear from you in chat, and Vivian, if you'd be so kind, or Nick, or Martin, whoever has the accountability on that, just monitor the chat if there's any inquiry or questions. I'd like to be as interactive as possible in this type of session. We're going to be using a software program you may be familiar with. A lot of people use this, called Mentimeter. And so right now, I invite you to do this. At this exact moment, if you're within hearing distance and you have a smart device next to you, a tablet, a smartphone, or even open up a new window in your computer browser, go to menti.com right now, because we're going to start right out of the chute with going to menti.com. Once there, have that website open and handy on your separate device or your other window, and you'll be prompted to get into our meeting management system. You should see something like this. If you're using a smartphone, this is my iPhone capture, and I'm going to give you a number to input into that device, and I'm going to flip windows rapidly over here. So hopefully you're in Mentimeter, you see this screen. This code number up at the top, 70215412. Please type that in. It'll let you into our online polling system. And just for exercise, just for fun, because it is lunch, check off, toggle on, punch on 2 of your go-to COVID guilty pleasures. Go ahead and do that now and hit submit, and let's just see what we come up with. We have a lot of people, so we should see, oh, look at that, a lot of dots flying in. So you should be seeing this up on your screen, and a lot of Netflixers. Wouldn't it have been fun to know this before and jump on the bandwagon and get some shares and other things in Netflix and Amazon and those types of things? Only a couple people are banana bread eaters. Okay. Lots of sleeper people. Hey, we have a toilet paper buyer. Remember when that was the rage not too long ago, that everybody had to have 5,000 rolls of toilet paper in their house. So thanks, keep filling this in as we go. I'll leave this poll open so that you can see it, but I'll flip back to getting into the content. But this is just so to get you used to using Mentimeter and the online polling system, because we will be using this a few more times in my presentation. Right. Why do values matter? Why would we care about such a topic called values anyway? They act as connectors between who we are as an individual, who you are as an individual, and the broader sense. That could be a team or a society or an organization. They are words that pack a punch. They're emotionally laden. Values trigger emotion. And the extent to which you're standing in a value, to the extent to which that emotion for you is triggered. Happy, sad, mad, glad. There's probably an underlying value within that you need to pay attention to. It also shapes our identity. So I know you spent this morning talking about things like branding and how to move, concept out, scale it out. And, for the most part, God love them, every, business school on the planet talks about get a highly charged and invigorated vision, mission, and values. Okay, and we spend a ton of time talking about our vision and mission. We all often confuse those, by the way, a vision and a mission. When I read some of the client vision and missions that I've come across for input, it's like, so is the vision actually a mission or the mission actually a vision? I'm not clear. That the mission is really the what you do. The vision is the outcome of that mission. What does it look like? That's why it's called vision. What does it look like and feel like? It's the outcome and the impact of the vision. And then often it's, oh yeah, we should have some values too. Let's come up with 6. I can tell you right now, there's probably something around communication, teamwork. What are some others that you typically come up with? It's a 15, 20-minute conversation, and there you go. We have 4 to 6 values. We'll print them all on coffee cups or put them up on posters in the staff rooms, and away we go. And that's not it, folks. let's make sure that we have that vision, we have that mission, and that we have the values. So I'm going to talk about all three of these together, in a cluster, and on how that actually works. Values, identity, culture, and brand. I want to focus in on the brand part too, but making implicit values explicit brings a shared purpose and identity to your entrepreneurship. Shared purpose, got to start with that. You probably know why you're in that genre, or inventing, or in that lab working on something. That's good for you. That's a start. What about your colleague next to you across the lab, or the one that you're partnering with or collaborating with on some entity? What's the shared purpose? And you can have that conversation, and you ought to be having it right now in this program. Values trigger emotion and story. Values are real for you to the extent to which they trigger emotion. I said that earlier. So here's a great opportunity for you to begin right now practicing value storytelling, what matters to you, and value story listening, what matters to others. Why would you do that? Well, so that you can work collaboratively together on a shared purpose. And what is your brand trigger for others? Why would I want to partner with you if I'm an investor? Why would I want to buy your stuff if I'm a customer? And at a broader sense, society, what is it that you have to offer? How do others experience what you do and why you do it? How do you know? So clarity of values shapes our who are we narrative, forms our identity. Who are we as a group? Great organizations, great leaders have that narrative dialed in very well, and it's conversational. It's not something that's printed on a poster that you've memorized. It's here's who we are, folks. Here's what matters to us. And we invite you to come alongside of us and enjoy our brand with us. And we know that culture is socially constructed, which means through dialogue, folks, through conversation, through getting curious. It is our brand. So it starts with the who are you? What do you stand for? What is your who am I narrative? Not merely a list of 4 to 6 values. It's what do those 4 to 6 values mean to you? What's your origin story? I mean, we had such a great example of that with Rob yesterday, who shared with us his, who am I story, his origin story, and how his experiences through the various events in his life made certain meaning to him and was a catalyst for him to get better, to go in, do other things. And within that, I would love to spend some time with Rob and kind of deconstruct all of that into a set of priority values. But we know that those are the things that we're speaking through when we're talking about the who am I narrative. And we know that it's more than just listing the 4 to 6. These values cluster together to form some sort of basis that we make our decisions on in context, and that they shift in context to what's newly important. What's an example of that, Vic? Well, universally, this is where I get to geek out as a sociologist, psychologist around values and study and culture. Universally across the world, something like COVID hit this time last year. Boom, set us into a different priority set of values around safety and security and self-worth and maintaining the self and our families. And it's been there for quite a while, and it's motivated a lot of research, a lot of work, and a whole different way of operating as humans. So, I mean, we can all talk about that for days, but that's a great example of it. So let's talk about it. Let's get back to Mendy. How do values cluster together to form decisions and behaviors? And so what? And how does this matter? I'm going to show you these 6 values that, kind of universally held human values to a certain extent. And I invite you to prioritize these in priority order to what matters to you now. How do these show up for you right now? What's a number 1 to number 6 priority? So I'm going to go to Mendy, and you're going to have an opportunity to rank these right now. Here they are. Go to Mendy. You should now be seeing your next screen. You'll see, option number 1, you get to pick all 6. And it might be whatever it is for you. Go through all 6 let's see what we have popping up on the screen as we go through these. Once you get all 6, hit submit, and here we come already. So we have our first person in, we have another person in. Watch how these priorities are reestablishing and resetting themselves across just the 42 or however many folks we are here now. If this were our organization, this group, and I was doing just a simple values audit about what matters to us as a cohort group, this is how this culture, this values that matter most to this group. This is quite interesting. So I ask you now, as we're inputting these, as others are inputting these in, are they the same? Is this priority order the same as the one that you came up with? Is it different? Is it fundamentally different? Because if it is, I mean, let's look at, we all share these full, these same 6 values, and yet we're prioritizing them in a different way, which will inform decisions and behaviors and strategic intents of organization differently. Give it another few seconds here to see if this reestablishes itself in any other way. It's looking like, here's our first priority value, shared value is family, equality rights, security, education, innovation, and economics and success, coming in 6th place. This is interesting to me as a cohort group. And it ought to be for you too, to think about where I am in relation to the rest of my cohort. So let's go back to keep inputting in there. I'll leave that open and we may come back to it. But when you think about the priorities between even 2 people, here's just randomly person A and person B. Let's talk about person A, much like what we were just seeing in our little inventory, family first, person B, education first. Security, economics, equality, innovation, different priorities. My question to you, and if you can, type it into the chat, answer these questions for us. How might these 2 sets of values priorities differ in behaviors and decision making? You got someone with number 1 is family, someone with number 2 education. You got these 2 people on a team. How might understanding this difference between people on your team, how is that going to be helpful for you in your organization? Knowing that values not only are present, but in priority order, they dictate some kind of new decision making. So I'm not seeing chat right now, but if there are some, Vivian, if you could read them out, that'd be great. Or Martin, anybody inputting anything in here?
Not yet, Victor.
Okay. Everybody's gone for lunch.
I think they're thinking deeply about it.
Okay, please do, and add those in as we go through. Like we'll cycle back to this because we're going to throughout the presentation. Point here is, if you're aware of your own values and your own values priority, and you're speaking to another who may share the same values but in a different priority order, they're looking for something different in what you say and in what we do. So just be aware of those things.
So Victor, there are some comments coming in. You can understand more of the motivation for actions. This is from Emily. If someone is less willing to work on a weekend because they prioritize family, they may not be here at this webinar.
Right on.
There you go.
That's exactly. Imagine person A is you, the entrepreneur, and person B is someone you want to partner with, an investor. How you approach that conversation is going to be a little bit different because you know that already going in. So we'll turn to this and we're going to talk more about this. So I invite you to clarify your who am I values laden narrative. Answer these questions. I think part of what you ought to be doing in your breakout groups now is just take a moment and answer these questions through your homework or through the next week. Is what brings you here? not here on a Saturday, but what brings you here to this vocation, to this study of all the choices you had to be what you wanted to be when you grew up kind of things. Here you are. What brings you here? What sustains you here? This is tough work, and yet we're pulling through and we're sustaining ourselves here. And what excites you about the possibilities here? Why are you really here? How do you and your brand story for your organization connect to others? Tell me a story. Why would I want to consider you and your company? Trigger my values too. Remember, my values might be in somewhat different priority. But if you can have this dialogue with other people, your brand is going to be much more successful in scaling it out. So who are you? Here's your first invitation, your first homework assignment. Remember, I was a teacher too. Draft your personal values laden who am I narrative. Entrepreneurial leaders shape the brand of the organization, so we know that great leaders speak this all the time. What do you do and how do you do it shapes the experience I have with your brand. Do what's called a free writing exercise. That's just start writing. Blank sheet of paper, pen in hand, forget the good grammar and everything that you're supposed to do. No APA formatting allowed. It's just start writing your first responses to this. I invite you to do that as homework, not right now, but at a later date. Once you get that, here's where it starts clicking into your identity as a group and as a brand. It's about a shared identity. Who are we then? Good for you. You each have an understanding of who I am, but who is the rest of, what do the rest of us bring here? What is our shared identity? Values and culture in the workplace. If you're leading an enterprise or if you find yourself in a leadership role in an organization, once you graduate, just know that leadership is social and it's relational. In other words, relationship between people. Sitting in your office from 8 till 6 as a leader is not a leader make. Leadership and leader is social and relational. Culture is then socially co-constructed through language. Hey, everybody, what are you working on? What matters? Where do we go from here? Getting curious, asking questions, and building relationships with others is the most important role of a leader. What we talk about, we in the organization, so listen what your peers are talking about in your breakout groups. What we talk about, our narrative of how we experience our work translates into visible outcomes and behavior. Are we on the same page? What are people talking about? What's the rumor mill talking about out there? How do you step in front of that, engage others? Practice values storytelling and values story listening. Practice this who am I narrative with each other. Practice the who are we with each other. So that when you step out this door and you go and try to connect with partners or investors, they're going to connect to you in some way that also triggers a value for them. So think about the strategic narrative and the culture of your brand. It's more than just what it is, a series of widgets. Great, connect to me in some way that is meaningful. So the who are we narrative is our shared identity. So I talked about that exercise of what brings you here. Now it's a great opportunity to get together with the group and say, what brings us here? Knitting each of our who am I stories, our values together. It's our collective why that we do what it is that we do. What common elements or values sustain us here? This is tough work. And there's going to be a lot of tough going when you're an entrepreneur. It's not easy sailing. What are those core elements that we're going to stand on and make decisions from? How do we build that agreement? It's important for you to get this as an entrepreneur right out of the chute, because you're going to get to it anyway. You're going to hit that rough time wall, and at some way decisions are going to have to be made. But a clear understanding, shared understanding what that is counts. So your second invitation to explore. Remember I said, let's explore. Your second invitation to explore is a draft of values laden who are we narrative. What do we do and why? I saw in your recommended reading list, there's Simon Sinek, Start With Why, certainly something that we use a lot of and makes a lot of sense. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. and the connection and my connection to it. That's really, really important when starting out as an entrepreneur. Having the best widget is, a competitive advantage. Having a story that goes along with it of why I would want to get into that and who you are is even better if. So what brings each of us here, and how does that build our brand? Your brand is more than a one-dimensional thing on a screen. It's multi-dimensional around who you are as humans that bring that brand to life. So not something we talk about in graduate school at all in many sense. We're very technically proficient, and then we start to stumble a little bit when we think about how do we connect with others in my team, and why would this matter anyway? So I provocatively ask you to think about it. So values culture in the workplace, here's some things for you to consider and work on. Values, along with the vision, are the basis for alignment throughout the organization. It's what brings people to the organization, these two things. Values drive leadership organizational practices. What's your dominant leadership worldview? Where do you come from? More a command and control type of leadership methodology, or something engaging and collaborative? Remember, there's a lot of different ways that leaders can show up. You can get to a point of engagement and enlightenment with the group, and sometimes it's appropriate to get into compliance with the group. What do you want as a leader? A group that's compliant or a group that's collaborative engaged? We can look at that through values. Values help create the identity of the team. We talked about this. Values awareness enables growth and development for individuals. The framework that I practice and research and write in is a developmental framework. There are values that are underpinned by skills. So let's excavate what those values are, and let's build those skills to enable you to be more of an entrepreneurial type of a mindset around leadership in the organization. Key challenge, man, have you ever seen this? Think about this. Values espoused with values and action discrepancy. So it's like, yeah, here's what I stand for. I'm going to self-declare myself a collaborative leader. And what collaboration means to me is, hey, everybody, if we're doing things my way and you're all kind of in agreement with what I'm going, this is the best collaborative team effort. No, that's not actually what collaboration means. And people have this wonderful, BS antenna on the top of their head. We can weed out that discrepancy pretty quickly. So that's not driving a real effective entrepreneurial team at all. Think about it. Last thing to put before you I invite you to explore with me is, here's the vision part. Extraordinarily important to dial this in a values-laden way. It's the where are we going strategic narrative. This is a co-constructed narrative that vividly paints a values-laden target for our collective future, our richly imagined future. Okay, so here's the thing. I've been in business organizations a long time, and universities, and see if you resemble this remark. Often, the leadership team goes away, to Kananaskis for a fun couple of days, and they spend some time in a boardroom, drink some coffee, eat some continental breakfast and stuff, and they carve out this vision. Oh, we want to be the best manufacturer of widgets in the world. It's not really a vision. If you have one of those, I invite you to kind of reconsider it, because what's the alternative? Let's be the most mediocre widget manufacturer in the world. It's not painting what a strategic outcome would be. We need to define not only what, but also why of what it is that we do. Define the outcome and the impact. What do you see as a result of your good entrepreneurial work? How is it benefiting others? What changed in that person or in society because of what you did? That's a vision. What shared values do you stand on to make critical decisions? What agreements can we make to honor these core shared values It's more than just words on a coffee cup. That might be my mantra for my next presentation, Vivian. Maybe Martin, that's the title for the next one. It's more than just words on a coffee cup. Like your invitation, yeah. Well, I'll start the coffee cup menu. Who wants to take up the entrepreneurial activity to make that coffee cup for us? Your invitation is to begin the dialogue with others to socially construct this future state, folks. It's socially constructed. Get together with your breakout teams immediately and start excavating what that richly imagined future is. What's the outcome and impact of our work? All right, back to Mendy. Those of you that are with us, here's an opportunity for you to think about what values then. I've been talking for a half an hour about values. Well, what are they? Let's take a stab at it. What values are core to establishing an entrepreneurial culture? Let's put these in. You can list up to 3 just for the sake of this exercise. Well, what values are core in establishing an entrepreneurial culture? If we don't know, then anything goes, right? But spend some time thinking about what that might be. You can put up to 3. Here they come into this lovely wordle. Look at innovation taking the quick early lead. Passion, communication, respect. Yeah. Open communication, fearlessness, safety to fail. Loved that narrative from last night. We talked about that failure is not fatal. In fact, it's a requirement of innovation. Collaboration is in there. Risk-taking, social consciousness, hard work. Yeah, it is hard work. Customer first. Impact. Innovation still out there. Innovation, passion, respect. Integrity. So, you know, if this were these 40 some odd people, if we were part of an organization, we could start having a very deep dialogue around the meaning of what innovation, passion, respect, and risk-taking looks like for us. We're an entrepreneurial entity that believes in innovation, maybe through passion, respecting each other and taking informed risk, whatever that narrative then can be. This gives us a framework to start that very meaningful conversation. Thank you, folks. There's still a few coming in. I'll share these as a screen capture with Vivian and Martin following the presentation, so I can leave this up. Please keep adding in what you think. Then use this in your breakout rooms and your breakout groups as a starting place to start creating some of those values that are important in an innovative organization and start make meaning out of them. More coming in. Thank you. Here's the things to consider as I flip screens back to the PowerPoint. Then what do these mean? Great to identify them. Values identification is a start, but what do they mean to you? Tell me a story of innovation for you. Tell me a story what respect means to you. What does that mean? Then how might we live into these in an authentic way? Have a conversation about it. Remember, the espoused values and values in action need to be in sync. What are they? People will sniff it out right away if they're not. How might we communicate these consistently and internally and externally with our group? What's the narrative? Again, build your values fluency through telling the story of what these values are and inviting others to do so. I want to get to a book that I recommended for you all to think about. There it is. It's a well-worn copy for me. I use it in a lot of my graduate teaching as well. It's called Firms of Endearment. And some of you might be thinking, yeah, so what? So what does this whole thing about values and entrepreneurial organizations mean anyway? And that sounds pretty, you know, mufty fluffy stuff. And it is, because humans are made of that. Values-based entrepreneurial organizations and firms of endearment says that today's greatest companies are fueled by passion. You listed it. And purpose, not cash. They earn large profits by helping all their stakeholders thrive, their customers, their investors, their employees, partners, communities, and society. That's what they posit in their writing, and they got a ton of examples of different firms that are living into this. So you can learn from them. Let's learn from them. We can be highly responsible and highly profitable at the same time. I heard that yesterday in the evening conversations. Is that something that we could do as entrepreneurs? And yes, yes. And they all have well-crafted values-based narratives. Let's play with this. So when you think about, okay, here it is. At some point, you're going to pitch. I see in your curriculum, your brand and who you are and where are we going kinds of narratives. Why would I want to work for you and your organization? Why would I even want to do business with you in your organization? That's what I'm listening to hear that. Here's an example. Heard of this group? Patagonia. When you first see that brand, it's a very well-established brand. A lot of people know it. What values are triggered for you when you think of this brand? Type a few into the chat. Let's hear a few. This is the time for you to use your fingers. And I know they're probably sticky from your eating your sandwich and your hamburger or whatever it is you got going on there. But when you think of this brand, Patagonia, what values, if you were to think about it for a minute, are triggered for you when you think of this brand? Type a few into the chat. And Vivian, if you could read out some, if people are putting them in, I would love to see those.
Yeah, we have sustainability, adventure, another sustainability, quality, environmentally conscious, advocacy, rugged, dependable, gear, nature, outdoors, old school, outdoorsy, nature, adventure, creativity. Right. Yeah.
A lot. It's an instant trigger. What are you going to trigger in me with your brand? What values are you going to trigger? When it becomes well-known, what are people going to say about that brand? I don't see any, oh, there's expensive. Yeah, it is. It's not cheap, yeah, but it lasts pretty much forever, and it comes with a lifetime guarantee and everything else that comes with it. Here's a quick story about Patagonia. I shared this with Martin. He says, tell the group this. During COVID, all the stores shut down. Patagonia has this brand promise that if something happens with your jacket, if your zipper breaks, bring it back to the store, we'll fix it for you. Well, there's no store to take things back to. There was an individual, a person that had the accountability to do that work, and he said, I can still bring the brand to the people. Set up one of those outdoor kind of tents and brought all the different kinds of zipper colors and zipper quality, and in a parking lot said, bring us your jackets. And we don't even care if it's a Patagonia jacket. Let me see if I can fix it. Well, this is a frontline contributor in an organization, didn't run this up the flagpole. So what do you think might happen in a traditional organization? It's like, listen, Vic, what the hell are you doing? You're setting up a tent in the middle of in a parking lot, and you're giving away our zippers? Holy, you got to go talk to your manager, fella, because we're going to have another conversation. Actually, what happened is that drove tremendous traffic to the online stores, because people said, holy cow, you'll fix my jacket for free. And it's not, yes, and I love your stuff. It actually increased revenue, actually increased the brand value by doing something that some people would think would be counterintuitive, right? So it's a real life story of a values-based organization. So let's carry on. Did you know, this is in the book, Patagonia receives 10,000 resumes for 100 openings. Why? That seems crazy. Some organizations have a lot of trouble trying to find staff at all levels in the organization. And here's an organization that receives 10,000 applications for 100 openings. Think about it. What is it about this brand that generates not just people buying their product, but people wanting to work there? Think about it. Here it is. I'm going to just hide that. In firms of endearment, they talk about something called a SPICE model. In your breakout rooms, or if you're online here, not part of this particular program, but think about how you can bring this back to your company. How are you connecting to society? What's the difference? What about partners? People that you want to partner with. You can't get an entrepreneurial effort off the ground without partners or investors. Why would I want to invest? And customers, why would I want to buy your stuff? Seems pretty expensive, but I sure want it. And employees, why would I want to be one of 10,000 people that submit an application to your group? It's about this thing that's popping up about the values, because it triggers emotion, it triggers action, it triggers and motivates me for want to come alongside of you and be partners with you, or invest in you, or be a customer, or work for you. Even better if, right? It's about my values, it's about your values, and it's about our values coming together in this circle that drives success in your entrepreneurial business, or any business for that matter. So I'm put that out as a bit of a provocation for you. Let's get into closing this up and take some questions. It's like, okay, so what, Vic? Now what? So for yourself, start with excavating and drafting your who am I narrative. Get your values identified, clarify them, and string them together in some sort of narrative. I use a tool called the Haltona value system, which makes these values very explicit and makes it much easier for us to work with. That's for another day. Then work with the team. Explore the team or the organization's who am I narrative, who are we narrative. And then get that strategic vision, that where are we going narrative. That's so what, now what? Also, if you're wanting to move into becoming a values-based organization, pitch your brand with depth, emotion, values, connect to me, like Patagonia does. Don't have to be the cheapest, but I sure want to buy their stuff. I have a closet full of their stuff. More than what you have to offer, articulate the why. Again, this is Sinek. Speak authentically to the values-laden narrative of who you are. Remember SPICE, the acronym for that framework from Firms of Endearment. Get your where are we going narrative dialed in soon, folks. So get in your breakout groups and start working them out. It's more than a tagline. It speaks to outcome and impact. You can connect it to an archetype, some kind of visual that brings the story through. Let me give you the richest example I've come across ever. Working at the University of Alberta within the Faculty of Medicine and Dentistry, there's a division called Pediatric Respirology. This group is having trouble figuring out their who are we and where are we going narrative. So we spent a ton of time with them excavating that. We had an all-in event where it was extremely emotional, and people were talking about this is who we are, and this is what we do, and there's a tug and a pull. And I was facilitating that, and I said, someone describe for me. Someone describe to me the output, the outcome, and the impact of what it is that you do. And someone did it. They went, Victor, it's this. You can see that. It's breathe, live, play. It's like, oh, that's fantastic. I love those 3 words. What do they mean? Says, Victor, let me tell you, when people come to see us, infants, small children, they're not breathing, or they're not breathing well. They're blue. So the first thing we do is restore their breathing so they can live, but not just live in a clinical sense, live as children. And what do children that are alive and functioning well do naturally? They play. Breathe, live, play. When they tell this extraordinarily emotionally laden narrative about the work that they do, and they do a much better job than I do, when people say, explain breathe, live, play to me, they do. And it triggers a lot of emotion. And they went on, wait, Vic, there's more. I see when we've restored, functional breathing, and those children are alive and well and playing, I see them at the beach. They're playing with other children. They're not masked up. They have a respirator on. They're back to being the best self that they could be in their situation, and they're building sandcastles together, Vic. That became their archetype, by the way. It's on their letterhead, not this picture, because I didn't have a license to use theirs. but they have breathe, live, play, and an archetype of a sandcastle on their letterhead and their business cards so that they can hand that out to people, and people will ask, what is that? And they tell them. And it's emotional, and it triggers people to understand what it is they do. So your invitation is, can you come up with breathe, live, play for what it is that you do? And the story that goes behind it, extraordinarily powerful. Here's your challenge, folks. Consider these elements. I invite you to do it. That's all it is. Consider. You can use them or not. I'd like to see you do that because I'm so invested in what it is that you do. I think there's some amazing things that are going to come out from you. Get feedback from others, me or Martin or any of those, Vivian or any of the people in your SMART or your PIs. Learn more about values-based leadership and values-based organizations. Read Firms of Endearment. Focus on what matters most. Society, partners, this is the spice stuff. What matters to them? Do you care? Are you curious about what would matter to those folks? Are you just so passionate about what it is that you have in your hand that you want to show everybody? Figure that part out. It's extraordinarily powerful. Just to bring in my mentor and colleague, this is Dr. Brian Hall, who I've partnered with. He's since passed away, but the Hall Tone of Values Theory map is what I practice, and it helps make this explicit. Don't want to spend time on it. So I'm going to give you some homework. This is the how-to pieces of doing this. Well, Vic, it was great. How do you do it? I'm going to run through these because I've PDF'd these, and Vivian and Martin, if you can send this out to the group, that would be awesome. Here's how you draft your who am I narrative. These steps, use it, follow it. Here's drafting our shared who are we. I think you're going to be doing something very similar kind of things this afternoon with your breakout rooms and your branding groups. Here's a piece on where are we going, your richly imagined future. Describe that impact and that outcome. Thread all this together in a narrative. And I kind of wish I was at those pitching sessions to see how these all come through in your brand pitches and give you some feedback, hint, hint. Here's some extra resources for you. Because of what I heard last night, and because in all of my reading and research, there is such a Western domination of leadership theory and methodology and application out there, you know, the heroic leader looking left on the cover of Maclean's magazine, that kind of thing, which has its place. Dr. Cindy Blackstock gives us an indigenous view of leadership, of culture, of things that can help you then take this to another level. Imagine that. So let's talk about a different way of looking at things. And Dr. Blackstock brings us in. This is an interview that we did with her as part of our Royal Roads program, and we were privileged to sit with her for, it's 45 minutes, but it's 45 minutes extraordinarily well spent around the breadth of life theory. So think about that. She proposes a relational worldview. She comes from, I think she has 4 degrees in physics and other things. So she's well-versed in Western education as well, but I invite you to read or to go through this. Margaret Heffernan, Forget the Pecking Order at Work, is all about super chickens and how can we work collaboratively work. So I'll leave this with you as well. So that's it. I used a lot of time. I think I talked more than I wanted to, but thank you. And I'm curious if there's any questions or answers. Vivian.
Thank you very much, Victor. This was just a critical webinar, and at a critical time for how to establish a team, how to work together, how to respect each other by understanding each other's values. It was also a great refresher for me from the time I took I was part of the workshop that you had organized, and you know, and these were things that I've tried to implement over the way, along the way. But it's wonderful to get this refresher. It's really how to get a team to work and to tick. So thank you so much. I know we only have 5 minutes for questions, so I'm going to focus on questions that came from the trainees. One question came from Yvonne. This is related to members of your team who have different priorities and different values. And what she says is, how to think about that, right? The two different personalities will bring different fortes. So prioritizing family doesn't necessarily mean that that person will only be spending time with their family, but they can better themselves and have their family as a driving force to become successful. So how would you, how would you comment on these, competing, not necessarily, but what may appear as competing values, and how do you compromise and really show that they're not really competing?
Yeah, and well said in the question itself is the priorities. I mean, if we're all sharing those same six in some kind of a cluster, and it's just a matter of prioritizing those, then there's actually a value called unity diversity. What a wonderful sounding value, unity diversity. We're united in our diverse way of being. And once we excavate what that diversity is, we can bring that power in. What does it mean? Tell me about your family. It seems to be extraordinarily important. What is it about that you bring into this enterprise? And why is it important? Another person would be other things. So once you start the dialogue and sharing, then you can see how these things connect to each other. And then the next question I would ask is, how might we honor that priority for you? What does that look like for you? And I think someone yesterday brought up, well, maybe that means, a more of a flexible work arrangement, work from home or whatever that looks like. It's coming in late to take children to specialized daycare. I've had that as a manager before, great. But if I don't inquire about that and why that's important for you and satisfy and honor and acknowledge that value, then I'm missing a great opportunity to enroll that person.
Yeah, I love that.
Such a great question.
Analogy.
Yeah.
So another question is kind of evolves around a question that both Martin and I had from the different perspectives, and that is, you mentioned stories, and you mentioned stories as ways to communicate and to demonstrate alignment of values, or to entice alignment of values. How, what are the skills that are needed to be a good listener? So that how you listen effectively and not just tell stories effectively and meaningfully, but also be a good listener and understand those stories.
Yeah, so wow. Yeah, great question. First of all, listen to Cindy Blackstock's video clip there. There's a lot embedded in there that I just don't have the time to go into and share, because our norm, if you will, our societal norm is to kind of be talkers, and we're kind of, loading our talking gun while you're talking to me, right? Because I just want to share my story. So it's practicing being curious, practicing being silent, practicing being present and listening. And one way to do that is to kind of, boomerang back or feedback what you've heard. So Vivian, what I heard you being curious about is this. Is that what you're saying? And tell me more about that. I'm curious about how you got to be where you are. What's the story there? So you're actually, asking more questions than you are talking. And that's one way to do it. Just getting curious. People, actually, if we give each other permission to tell these stories, which we do when we're kids, by the way, we get together and we tell all kinds of great stories. And then we get into these institutions and we're kind of said, no, stop it. I'm the expert here. I'm going to tell you everything that you need to know. So listen to me. I'm going to do all the talking. And we kind of strip that down a little bit. But what we know as humans is that's an integral part in relationship building and being human, bringing life and emotion to the work that you do. Practice.
Yeah.
Great question.
Thank you for that. I'm going to take the liberty of taking one extra minute and ask a question that actually combines two questions. So, Michelle was asking, is there a particular order for spice, or are all the elements of spice equal? And then I'm going to add to that is, our values evolve over time because we learn, we grow, we experience more things. How do you ensure that your team is evolving similarly, or at least to reevaluate where your team's values are, and maybe are all those values equal? How do you coordinate that?
Yeah. start with that first part. The SPICE model is get together with your team and find out what's most important for you. Where's your first connect point? It might be, well, we need to get a hold of some investors and some partners right away, right? So that might be the place to go. But it's keeping those in balance. So the answer there is, it depends on you as is this a first time out of the chute, no one's ever heard of you before, or are you rebranding and trying to reconfigure yourself and people already have a sense of who you are? So you want to make sure that you have that conversation in your entrepreneurial team and say, who are we going to speak with first? And what do they want to hear from us? That's the next question, not just me talking to you. What do they want to hear from us? The second part of your question was about, values, and we know values shift. They're shifting on a spectrum all the time, even as we're speaking, from those things around family and belonging things to innovation and pioneerism and creativity and, the world. They're somewhere on this spectrum. And unless we inquire with each other with some genuine curiosity as a values-based leader, and literally say, how are things going? Like, what's important for you right now? It might be family things. Okay, well, we need to attend to those values that are calling to us right now before we can be in another place. And just know that of all the values, and in the framework that I practice, 125 that are universally held across humanity, that they prioritize themselves all the time, and that they're all neutral. They're all wonderful, and they're all valued. They all hold value. That there's no gooder or badder values. They just are, and it's the story that goes with it.
Thank you so much, Victor. I know we've gone a little bit over, but I really truly appreciate your words of wisdom. And this was just an absolutely wonderful webinar. And I would like to give credit to Martin for his latest word of wisdom about how to listen. And that is, remember the word wait. Why am I talking? Right? So thank you so much, Victor and Martin. Thanks for that closing remark.